Hey, if you are new to Trinity, well, once again, welcome. But here at Trinity, before we get into the sermon, we have what's called a Worldview segment. Some of you might ask, well, why do you have a Worldview segment? Do all churches do this? No, not necessarily. We have a Worldview segment because we want our members to be, number one, informed, to know how to pray so they can be empowered to act. We base this on a verse of Scripture out of 1 Chronicles chapter 12, verse 32, where it says, the sons of Issachar understood the times in which they lived, and they knew what they should do. So as Christians, we need to understand the times in which we live in, so we could know, once again, informed to pray, empowered to act. Here at Trinity, we believe we're a spiritual intersection where moral, cultural, social, political issues collide with biblical truth. So I want to talk about the war of pronouns. On January 1st of 2021, the newly elected Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives at that time, Nancy Pelosi, and the Rules Committee Chairman, James P. McGovern, they introduced a new set of House rules for the 117th Congress at that time. And with the new rules that they introduced, which were supposed to promote diversity and inclusiveness, so they banned words such as father, mother, son, daughter, brother, and sister, no longer to be used under that Congress. The gender-neutral terms, parent, child, sibling, were to take their place. Similarly, himself, herself, are to be replaced by themselves. Not to be outdone, across the pond in Europe, south of England, the maternity staff at Brighton, Sussex University Hospitals, NHS Trust, were advised to stop using terms, I'm not making this up, to stop using the terms breastfeeding and breast milk. Instead, they were to speak of chest feeding and human milk. A new policy issued by the trust aims to be, quote unquote, inclusive of trans and non-binary birthing people without excluding the language of women or motherhood. Most recently, just this past week, the Michigan House Democrats passed a bill making the use of wrong pronouns finable by up to $10,000 and possibly 5 years in jail. That's what's coming our way. Now, if it's not enough for someone to play make-believe, you are now to play their game or you will suffer the consequences. So we live in a world today where reality is not relative, where reality is relative, and morality is non-binary. It's not right or wrong anymore. And government can now control your speech, and soon they will attempt to control your thoughts. So who would have ever thought, just 5 years ago, that the deep spiritual and philosophical question of our day would be this: can someone be born in the wrong body? But this is the question that's being asked. Well, the short answer is no. It's not a new body, surgically modified, that people need, but a new heart. You see, your body hasn't deceived you. It's the heart that is deceitfully and desperately wicked above all else, and God's in the business of changing hearts. So in the Judeo-Christian worldview, the body is something sacred. Your body to God is sacred. Unlike the ancient teachings of Gnosticism and paganism of Paul's day and even of our day today, which held the belief that all matter was evil, therefore only spirit was good, Christians, they view the human body as a sacred temple that God, by His Spirit, actually dwells in. So to harm or mutilate that body, which is the temple of God, would be to defile it and commit sacrilege. So the pronoun war, it is a battle line that the godless pagans of today have drawn in our culture, and they are saying either play or pay. So society basically has made the deal with the devil, and the consequences will be far-reaching. For example, one list on Tumblr for names has a list of close to 400 different gender options. How can you keep up with all of this? Gender fluidity conveys the idea that people can move back and forth along the gender spectrum. The idea is so acceptable to many millennials, Gen Y, and post-millennials, Gen Z, basically those born after 1984, that they've been dubbed the gender fluid generation. So this quote that I'm going to share with you has never been more accurate than it is today by a former great Christian author and apologist, G.K. Chesterton. He said this: when men choose not to believe in God, they do not thereafter believe in nothing. They then become capable of believing in anything. Now, when did all of this start? In his book, How Should We Think About Gender and Identity by Robert S. Smith. He says this: social commentators are generally agreed upon that the time near the year 2013 was when Western society reached a transgender tipping point. And what triggered it? In part, it was triggered by the success, believe it or not, of a TV series called Orange is the New Black. Sociologically speaking, a tipping point refers to the moment in time when a minority is able to change the attitude of a majority, a change that presupposes the weakening, if not the collapse, of long-held understandings and assumptions. This is what's going on. It has a spiritual source. Therefore, there's only a spiritual solution to what we're facing in our world today. That's why we need to be informed to pray so that we could be empowered to act. When you lose your faith, you lose your way, and America needs to find its faith in God once again.